excited for our conversation today. Will be a little bit more of a lighthearted one as we introduce Roompact's 2023 Summer ACUHO-I Intern. Probably jumbled the usual order of those words, but this will just be kind of a way to get to know Kassidy and who she is. So she'll be working with Roompact over the course of the summer, and we'll bookend her journey to have reflections at the end. But this will just be kind of getting to know Kassidy a little bit. So if you want to introduce yourself, kind of who you are and your background, and then we'll get to a few other questions.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. My name's Cassidy. I'm currently now second year doc student at Texas A&M University studying higher education administration. And prior to that, I got my master's degree there as well, doing educational administration with the emphasis on student affairs administration, higher education, because we cannot have short labels in this field. And then for my undergrad, I went to University of Puget Sound up in Tacoma, Washington, where I studied communications and business. But I've just kind of spent most of my time in housing within student affairs. And so here I am again doing housing stuff on the res ed side, though. So,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and I know like Roompact is part of sort of the wave, kind of shepherding in like residential education, like bringing a lot of sort of those kind of curriculum best practices and things to the space, which is refreshing because I came up through residence life as well, kind of the traditional classic path and everything, and I think just reflecting on even I guess like 10ish years ago, like what it looked like then, I think for the most part, and now that sort of like that decade of like Roompact existing, I think that just definitely reflects a kind of certainly a digital transformation of how you sort of supplement residence life, but then that sort of more thoughtful, kind of curricular approach and everything that Roompact's involved in everything. But uh, yeah, and I know just, I mean, because I think I saw that at least in like your introductory blog post, which we'll make sure to the link in the show notes for this as well. But like that, yeah, your master's program being like that is like literally the longest. So and that's like Texas A&M is not unique in that regard. Like a lot of other programs have that sort of like all encompassing, kind of title. Where my graduate program at Rutgers University was just college student affairs, which is actually probably like one of the more unique one. Like, but yeah, where it's like student affairs administration and higher education, like Sahi. That is funny, yeah, and like any other field, I guess we love our acronyms, but um and so I guess for another one, Akuhuai, I know Roompact hasn't been, they've been involved in the internship cycle, recruitment process for a few years. And I believe, you presumably were maybe trying to seek out some more unique sort of, involvements for the summer and everything. But like, how did you find out about Roompact? Like, were you filtering out a lot of other stuff? Did you just kind of stumble upon it or did you know about it beforehand?
yeah, well, so University of Puget Sound was a room-packed campus, and I believe that they still are. And so back in 2016, I think UPS started utilizing Roompact for the room condition reports, the intentional interaction, and I was on the student leader side of that. So fast forward the many years in between that and now, this is my second ACUHO-I internship experience. And so for me, I was looking for something that would allow me to engage in like a different skill set because during the school year, I'm a graduate hall director. I supervise 16 students. I'm doing conduct, I'm doing programming, I'm doing community development. And so to be able to work remotely, this is a completely new space for me, but also engage in a internship with a company instead of an institution, I think is a really unique experience. I know Roompact is very excited about being a B Corp uh, company and such. And I feel that working with them already, it emanates in like how, the small team shows care for one another. And so, yeah, I guess for me, I knew that Roompact existed. I heard through the grapevine that they had some internships on ACUHO-I. because my first ACUHO-I experience or run was during COVID. And so I knew that they had one then. And then I was like, well, I wonder if they're doing it again. So, and they were. So, and it just happened to be that after reading the position description, it was something that I was looking forward to in terms of curriculum development and sitting in and seeing the unique ways in which they develop relationships with different institutions across the country. So,
Yeah. Well, and I guess just since you're saying like, you've had that kind of warm embrace of the Roompact team already, as of the recording of this episode, what day number is it for you so far?
I started last Monday, so I guess 8 days. It's been a short amount of time, but since that, since starting, I have met with the entire team. I've sat in on a sales call. I'll be meeting with um, Paul while he meets with different institutions to kind of get Roompact started and see where they are in their progress. I'm working on developing curriculum for RAs. So it's a busy summer, but it's a good one so far. Day 8.
Well, and I guess it's just the idea of it being kind of a testament to, like you're saying, kind of their sort of cultural values and everything, that even 8 days in, you're sort of like, feel very warmly welcomed and everything. And yeah, I mean, I will just kind of continue to echo this throughout, various episodes. Like, I mean, I've just always held them in very high regard. And I'm just very appreciative for this sort of opportunity to kind of bring my skill set to collaborate with them. And just just good people, and it's always nice to work with good people. But so I guess, yeah, I mean, I kind of want to dig in a little bit more with, like, your ACUHO-I selection process. So, like, were you looking, because I'm like, I think I remember sort of investigating it, or sort of like, looking into it in between my 2 years in grad school. Ended up doing a orientation experience at Rutgers where I was. But like, were you looking for like, predominantly a remote position? Like, was there a lot of those? Because I'm curious now, sort of where that kind of stands. Because, like, certainly you would think that there's marginally at least more than there were a few years ago, but residence life and what kind of positions are on there have to more often than not be location based. So I'm curious just kind of what that experience was looking at. Like what were you looking for and how that sort of went, just kind of generally, like, anecdotally.
Well, logistically speaking, I believe, like, as far as I know, Roompact is the only company that is on ACUHO-I versus institution. I was open to being on site, but my first ACUHO-I internship was on site, so I had already had that experience. And so for me, this was, besides personal factors of being able to spend time with family in between during the summer, right? This was kind of like this would allow me to like flex some skills that are probably a little bit rusty in a sense of like not being in an office every day. And I've made a goal of mine to create a schedule to kind of hop around and learn more about home while I'm doing my internship, because since I grew up here, my life was wake up, go to school, come home. But now as an adult, like learning about where I'm at through working remotely and such. Um, but in terms of deciding on the like what specifically I was looking for, I am a big person on community and feel. And for me, that meant showing up like authentically as myself in the ACUHO-I process, and asking questions on like what's your culture like at your institution or within your company? How do you integrate a new staff member? How do you show support when someone is struggling like on your team? To me, that culture of respect, trust, and care is so important. And so and you don't really see that through a position description. You have to feel it, right? And so it just so happened to be that I was lucky enough and worked hard to engage in different interviews, get to know where I would be if I engaged, in an on-site ACUHO-I internship experience. And I don't think I could have gone wrong in any decision that I made. It just happened to be that Roompact, from my search, was this would be a completely different experience than what I've had thus far. And like how I shared earlier, I do the day to day hall director duties. And so this allows me to really kind of be on the back end and flex some of those like research muscles and creativity muscles to, help support RAs across the country as they develop as student leaders.
Yeah, well, and yeah, that's interesting because the whole process. I mean, with any job search, it's like you know, kind of you have to sell each other or something. It's like imagine that was the case for you. If it's like if I'm going to go be somewhere for the whole summer, like that'd be a pretty sweet deal because it's like with especially I think a residence life like a Kuhuai internship. And I would say, I guess maybe the same thing for like a NOTA, like orientation. Like it's kind of like it would become sort of all encompassing. So it's just sort of like, if I'm going to plant myself somewhere for, a few months, it would have to be, a good position, good, institution. But like, you know, that's something even I remember from certain searches, like the one I did after I graduated, after being a residence director full time for 2 years, is like, realizing where like I'm just applying for positions where I'd just be doing the same thing somewhere else, and that can be valuable. Like if it's very different, but it was just like other schools in like New England or the Mid Atlantic that were so it's just like okay, I kind of had to like sort of reset and sort of be more kind of honest with myself of what I was looking for, and thankfully that's when I kind of made my initial pivot into ed tech. But that's the sort of like work you have to do yourself to know kind of what you're looking for and know your value, know sort of like what you offer and that you're sort of competitive. But then, uh, it's interesting, I guess, just to hear that, maybe they weren't, maybe they are, but like that Roompact would be the only company, like, because it's like there's other ed tech companies that work in res life. And if they're sort of honestly like missing out on like people who would bring a really, niche relevant expertise versus just being, and no shade to them, but like, just some business major or something, whatever. It's like, I mean, you could get somebody that like, knows their stuff for like I read, but and just if like I don't know how prevalent like remote ones were, where it could be like, hey, we can't really host anybody on campus, but we'd love to have somebody and we would still have them remote. Like that may still be a little bit of sort of uh a notion that has not really integrated itself into the culture of, various teams. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's an accessibility thing, right? A few years ago, the internships that were offered on ACUHO-I were not as vast as they were this year. I think the total amount that were offered for students across the nation were maybe like 100 to 150 range compared to the hundreds that were on there this year. And so, yeah, I definitely think it would be just in general moving forward cool culture shift to see institutions that are maybe like, well, we can't house you, but here's how we can kind of make this opportunity accessible to you so that you can learn about our campus culture and our different practices and our mission here. So it'd be very interesting to see if like a Kuhoi or the institutions continue to like expand their horizons on like what this internship process looks like.
Well, even like we'll kind of move on from that because I'm just sort of geeking out about this aspect of it. But is like they could almost be modular with it, where like some may be like we want somebody in person, we have the capacity for that, and that's what we prefer. There's some that like we can't make space for people here, but we'd love to have them remote. And then if it's like some positions where it's like, what do you want? Like, do you want to be here or do you want to be in person? And it's like, honestly, we could probably pay you more, like a little bit, like marginally, if we don't have to pull from our budget to like buy, like pay for an apartment or something or whatever. So it's like, hey, you choose, like we're open to having an amazing person come here in the way that works best for them because we can work with you whatever way you prefer. Like that would just be refreshing. And I'm sure that like sort of waves of that are sort of going to be kind of cascading over the years as sort of, culturally and even just sort of like the infrastructure sort of, kind of adapts to that of like, I'm sure even just like how a position gets posted or different, like little kind of the fields that you select when you're like creating a position on things where it's like, I can't make this more explicit that it's like a hybrid thing, or you can choose, if you want it virtual or in person. Like there's little things and then just sort of big kind of paradigm shifts and everything. So, in the years to come, I guess we'll have to keep checking in with future interns to see kind of what the frontier there looks like. But so you'd already mentioned some of the things that you're working on for Roompact, and maybe if it's just sort of like sort of the larger sort of feelings or sort of goals that you have or anything like. What are you excited for most about working with Roompact?
Besides just being in a completely different environment, 3 things I'm very passionate about are, include mental health, student development, and equitable practices in higher education. And so, knowing that what I have control over this summer is to develop this curriculum to help support RAs, because what I don't think we talk enough about in the field is how wild it is that we ask student leaders to provide all sorts of support to peers that are at the same developmental stages as they are, which is kind of wild, that peer to peer support. Um, and so I'm just excited to really infuse the or hopefully infuse the curriculum that I develop with like that intentionality of caring for self and developing self and engaging in equitable, like reflective practices just to become like a better student leader. Trainings that I've sat in on for RA development in general. So just like the generic, it's July, RAs come move in. There's so much thrown at them in a matter of a week, 2 weeks. And I don't know how much can really prepare you for that first night that you're on call. And so to be able to have that freedom to really reflect back on my own experiences, reflect on what it's like being a supervisor to RAs that are engaging in those experiences right now. I'm just excited to give back to the field because Roompact serves a huge community. And so I'm that's what I'm looking forward to the most. The in between things of learning about sales and learning about integrating Roompact and connecting with the team. That's just icing on the cake. But for me, I'm sitting here with my head down, my researcher hat on, and maybe that's just the doc student in me of like how can I give back to this community because there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of areas of improvement.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things there. I mean, like for the sort of holistic learning that you'll get from doing this, it's like you'll be able to kind of like sort of Goldilocks or something, your way through like, getting exposure to all these different things where it's like, oh, maybe sales is interesting. You're like, oh, it's a little too much of this or not enough of that. Like just the way that these sort of interactions happen that you won't have to obviously you're just getting like a brief snapshot, but you won't have to rely on sort of just your own like imagination of like what would a salesperson, partnership development or whatever in higher ed tech or anything, like what could that look like, or all these other things. So like you would have that opportunity to refine what that sort of like next position or ideal position or organization, like what would be emblematic of an ideal situation there. And it's that idea of like what you kind of spoke to before where like you had a very clear idea of what you were looking for, and certainly it's going to behoove any organization, whether it's in an ACUHO-I process or not, to like make as much very transparent in the job description, because I think a lot of times they're just kind of static and bland or something. You can kind of make that as sort of vibrant and dynamic and reflective of you as possible, but then like sell yourself through that interview process. But like as much as you can control is like exposing yourself to all these new things, so you kind of have a really good idea of like, yeah, I love working remotely, or I prefer maybe hybrid, or I love being on a small team, or actually I prefer one bigger, or yeah, having this larger impact is awesome, or actually I like to be more intimate, kind of one-on-one sort of interactions or something. It's like, yeah, I mean you're only gonna know that with more of a level of certainty by doing exactly what you're doing. And I certainly encourage any undergraduate student or graduate student to do that. But kind of what you were speaking to before though too, of like the work that you'll be doing with kind of the curriculum and development for student staff members, like I think it is so spot on. It's where like it's the same idea of something like orientation, where like everybody wants sort of their piece of the pie. You're just sort of like deluging these new students with, information and everything. But uh, there may not be as much emphasis on like, maybe what do you need to know first? Or are we going to kind of continually develop you? Or how can you try to like organize your resources and sort of take care of yourself, or like, so there's like all this other sort of like context where it's like, yes, like all of this is super important information for these student staff members to know to best support their peers, but like how can we maybe deliver it via better medium or platform or something, or do it kind of in an order where it feels more relevant of like what do you need to know on the first day or something, like, and start there, and then we'll kind of fill you in as you go along with stuff that's relevant, or have areas where you can kind of go at your own pace. And if you like wait, actually, could you go over that again? It's like, yeah, you're in like a learning management system, and getting more exposure to different modalities of content, and being able to like watch it as many times as you need to. So I think, yeah, there's like so much sort of like fertile ground for like kind of what you're doing to kind of you know have even just like this kind of like uh sandbox or incubator or whatever you kind of want to call it, to kind of play around a little bit and start to sort of like be like, okay, here's what I've kind of drafted up, workshop it, and kind of start at least kind of with the version 1.0 of this sort of thing. So definitely excited to see what you come up with.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, yeah. I mean, it's good work. It's important work, and yeah, I know you'll have kind of a whirlwind summer of room pack stuff to be working on and folks to connect with and everything like that. But we'll maybe check in to see what you did accomplish. No pressure of like do as much or as little as you want. But I figured a fun ending question would be: do you have at this moment in time, as we're recording this, which is like right about the end of May, we just had Memorial Day, so summer is officially started. Do you have any fun summer plans coming up the next few months?
Yeah, I will be doing some traveling with my family up to Washington, and we'll make a stop in Canada, hop over to Spokane, do like a mini trip near the end. But really, I'm treating this summer to work on my personal growth, work on just taking a breather, because as soon as that end of July, early August season starts, it's no stop until first closing, and then it's no stop until spring closing. So for me, there's an emphasis this summer on personal development and reflection on who do I want to be after I finish this doctoral program? What is my path going to be? Because there's a lot of questions up in the air. No one has it figured out. And I'm just trying to go along for the ride and identify you know after working with Roompact, do I 100% know that I want to be working for a student affairs company versus an institution? What does that look like? How would I even make that transition? Or do I know, oh my goodness, I could not work remote. I need to be around people all the time. And so it's a learning opportunity for me. And that's such a funny educational answer to give you, because you asked me what I'm doing for fun this summer. But yeah, it's a mixture of infusing little moments with my community, with my family, while also like working on my development. So I'm really excited to be here, and I feel very lucky to be sharing a space with people that are so passionate about helping develop student leaders and professional staff, and create practices that are accessible for institutions across the nation so that they can effectively serve students, because it all trickles down. If the resident directors understand their role and how they're developing their RAs, and the RAs will understand how they're going to pour into their students, and then hopefully that impacts the campus community for the better. So yeah, I that's a long-winded way of me saying I'm going with the flow, and that's that, which is probably something you will not hear me say again, because I'm not a go with the flow kind of person. But yeah, I'm taking this kind of one day at a time, and just enjoying the breathing space that I have before I hop back into my curriculum and my job and such. So it's a nice change of pace for the summer.
Well, yeah, like you have a position that grants flexibility, so it's like taking advantage of that while uh I know it'd be hard for me to just be like, okay, like the whole summer I'm just like doing nothing, like I'm not, being sort of quote unquote productive. But it's like even that idea of sort of very holistically, like, everything is a learning opportunity, whether it's taking a trip to a new area or exploring the area that you're in, or, doing whatever, having that be nourishing in a sense of just sort of like rest and sort of that space. But then uh, obviously there's like a level of sort of fulfillment and energizing of just sort of like, learning and all that. Because I think, yeah, it's always complicated. Like there's never like a simple answer. But like, there's a place for sort of just like almost boredom. And I'm sure if you're sort of going with the flow, like that could sort of come up where it's just like, yeah, some days I'm just gonna like take it easy and just like not really do anything and just like hang out. And then, you're taking a trip to new areas and you're going on excursions and you're, doing amazing, incredible things and doing work in between and doing, like all these sort of things. So it's like you can kind of bounce around and not, like I said, like have sort of like an internship experience where you're almost like locked in a bubble and you're maybe getting something from that, but it's kind of uh you know restricting and sort of limiting. So I think you've achieved what should hopefully sort of beget you a very dynamic, flexible, sort of gainful and fruitful experience this summer. And we'll certainly check in and see if it's like, oh my god, I was like way too sort of like aspirational, I did too much or whatever. Hopefully that's not the case, but I look forward to hearing all about your summer and keeping tabs on your exploits on what's shared across on the Roompact blog and all that good stuff. But yeah, so we'll see you back here in a couple of months after what sounds like it'll be a super fun summer. But thanks for hanging out and introducing everybody to yourself. And yeah, just have a good rest of your day.
Thanks a bunch. Good to be here.